Welcome to the 301 Podcast, the interview podcast for the hottest up-and-coming entrepreneurs, artists, and creators. Real, authentic, and inspiring. And here is your host, Marcus Engel. Let's get it started in 301.
Welcome back to the 301 Podcast, and today we have Mourad Bahrouch here. Mourad is a former freelance 3D art director. He turned into a podcast maestro and is also a mentor for 3D emerging talent. Mourad, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate this.
Let's kick off with a really difficult choice. Forever 3D art or forever podcasting?
Oof, good question. I would definitely never forget about my past. I believe that I had like a great, journey so far. I think it really fundamentally put me on this space where I am today. I mean, without that fundamental knowledge of 3D, I wouldn't could be talking on the podcast about what I'm talking on the podcast. So no, definitely podcasting is, you probably know, like it's such a wonderful journey, and I think definitely this forever. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Last week we went to Media Monk's Creator Club Lounge at their office. And one thing that stood out for me together was that you almost knew everyone. You shook hands with everyone knew you. Like, take us a little bit along the journey. Like, how did you get started in the creative field?
Yeah, so basically it's an interesting idea where I started like a long time ago when I was 20 on, just not, trying to design something, like just to bring in some idea out in the world. And I found that, through drawing or through 3D, utilizing 3D technologies, you could actually like visualize an image in a hyper-realistic way, which was like a thing back then. And that, took me in a long journey where I, started to, just naturally look into nature and see like how everything works and how nature actually just grows in itself. And apparently there was like a whole industry behind it, which is called film industry. Like you can actually make movies in 3D. So that's where, I dove in and I found a lot of, like a lot of people that were super excited about this topic, which is hyperrealism. So photorealism. How can you create something from scratch that looks realistic, which is really interesting. Like you can manifest your ideas into reality. So all of these people were always like super humble, like kind of healthy from time to time, and very kind. The community of the 3D artists is always very welcoming. And, like probably as well, like as a creator, you always are seeking for new answers. You're always like very curious about what's next, like what can I do next? Like, how can I move to the next level?
When was then the first time that you got in touch with like 3D art, like hyperrealism? Like, when was like the time that you really, there's like this whole field to explore? And was then just for you a logical step to study it then and to go down this road, or how did that work?
Yeah, basically, I think at some point, exactly. I think a lot of like 3D artists, if you're watching, like you probably understand this. But if you are like a photographer, you also probably understand this, or a visual artist in general. You just want to touch upon like few areas in a visual sense of where to go. And in 3D, you have a lot of spaces where you can go. You can, model things, and you can also texture things. You can render things, and you can animate things. But if you are a generalist, then you combine all of these together in one image. And that is the ultimate goal of every 3D artist, is to basically, acknowledge everything, which is almost like being, like you have control of the whole scene in 3D. And a lot of beautiful things can happen where, let's say I make something and you go like, oh, like I didn't know that you can think this and create this as well. So especially if you're using 3D technologies, you can really go deep down into like a really interesting, space where brands can ask you for help.
For me, it was interesting that basically right after you were finished with your studies, you immediately started working for yourself.
Yeah, I was hired actually before.
Are you hired before?
Yeah, I was hired like right after my intern, like right then and there, and really like with a good price. Like shout out to Woodwork, still love you guys. I was hired right after, and I think it's because of the passion. Really, like if you're like you probably are super passionate, right? Like about podcasting, man. Like I mean, it's such a beautiful thing that once for everyone who's listening, like once you find like something that you really truly love, I like I understand it's like a very cliche things to say, but really like hold on, and even if it doesn't pay off today, it will definitely pay off like at least like in 2 to 3 years.
When was then the moment that you decided like, hey, I don't want to work for woodwork anymore, I want to start on my own? Was that pretty fast, or when did you find that out?
Actually, with woodwork, after 6 months, I decided to go freelance right then and after, because I could balance 2 things at the same time, which are really focusing on, again, like my obsession, which is like being super obsessed about 3D and experimenting, right? Like I just wanted to experiment with like new techniques and new ways of creating 3D and maybe like new materials. I was obsessed with gold. Like I just wanted to create gold. And I just couldn't. As this, I'm talking about like 15 years ago for all the 3D artists that would go like, yeah, we can just like drag and drop this from here. This is like 15 years ago. So it was really hard to do that. So that's what I would do, like maybe in a weekend plus 2 days. And then next to it, I would freelance. So, and that was, yeah, man, like it was a big, as you say, like to have one client that you can sustain for a long time. It, first and foremost, like it really teaches you like how to be an actual human being. Like how do you communicate your visuals to someone that will buy it, and to also make sure that it's really good, qualitative, and maintain like a real relationship. So that's when I started to get a sense of like, oh wow, like I really like 3D, but I also like this. This is also super nice. Like how do I maintain a relationship? And at some point you start to realize like, oh, there are like a lot of other puzzles that come to this freelance. I'm not even talking about entrepreneurship. Like this is just freelancing. Freelancing, like having one client that gives you like a project, and you always stay with that client, or you go to someone else, or you have 2 at the same time or more, if you are good enough that you start to. So that's when the ball started to roll for me. Slowly but surely, again, like being a nice person, just being super kind, like deliver more than what they ask for, really brought me further. And just keeping my skills, sharpening my skills every other day. That way I started to land bigger and bigger projects, and yeah.
Nice. I mean, I've worked in the creative field as well, still do somehow. And I've also worked on the client side, on a brand side. And I know that the client briefings are always like super tight in terms of like what they expect and what they do. How did you balance this kind of like creative freedom that you kind of need also to create really cool things, and still being able to manage a little bit the brief of the client? Like how did you manage this balance?
Usually as an artist, you kind of have already like an established style. So you have a difference between a designer and an artist. So usually they come to you as an artist, and so you already have like, they know who you are, they know what you have, and they know how you come to the table. So they almost ask you, actually what they do really ask, like, this is the brief, can we just please use your visuals and we just put our logo on top of it? That's basically what they are asking for. But then obviously you want to change it to their needs and wants. But to balance these 2, I think for me, it was mostly really being humble, man. Like just being as humble as you can. I think for me, like what really works, like this is maybe like a tip for everyone who wants to be humble. I don't know, like if that's a question, but like if you sport, if you run, if you do any physical exercise that gets you really tired, that's basically being humble by nature. Like you can't do, like some other person is definitely better than you in something, so that makes you more humble. And that's how I always come to my client, like, hey, how can we go to the better place for you as a client? On the flip side, like it's an actual project. So so being very humble, and luckily enough, I've been always into sports, and that brings me most of my humbleness. If I think that is the best way to, at least for me, like that worked out, like how to balance these 2 worlds together. If you come in a room with an ego in front of someone who is already your client, who comes already like with a certain ego, I don't think it will work out. Like I think someone has to be super humble, and in that case, it was always me. And I think also like I really like to be in that space. I really like to be a student. I believe like a lot of students think that after school, like you stop being student, but for me, like I'm a student forever. like you can always learn from someone else, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And were there moments in the past where it was like more difficult for you, like also because of course like this humbleness, and this can also be a negative thing, right? Like, because if you have a pushing client, I mean, maybe it's interesting also for like maybe starting freelancer in any industry, basically. Yeah. Like, how do you manage like to still like, stand your ground somehow and manage this relationship?
Definitely, yeah. This is a very good question, because it really, this can help a lot of people. In my case, if the client doesn't fit the way I think and the way I can deliver the quality work that I'm usually delivering with other clients, which already worked out, that way I believe that it just doesn't fit. Sometimes collaborations just don't fit, and you want to actually realize that beforehand. And sometimes you just get a sense of like, okay, so this kind of way of working I don't appreciate, and I do appreciate this kind of working. Like, there is so much in this world that you can explore. So, and also, like, there is also so much, a lot of fishes in the sea. So you can, just focus on that, I guess.
And if you talk about the creative space that you need normally to create, and if you talk about your creativity, how do you activate your creativity? Like, is it a switch? Or is it something that comes gradually for you? Is it something that you can put yourself into the space? Did you learn to switch it on? Or I'm really curious about that.
I think for me it was always, this might differentiate for a lot of people, but I used to be a night person. I used to work at night. I just loved the silence and just, like this. I'm talking about the experimental side, like where I was learning things and where I was creating, let's say. Like, I wasn't just waiting for the muse to come to me. Like, I would really like go after it, and usually it was at night. I really liked working like from like 8 until like 4 a.m. in the morning. It was super nice. But now, like funny enough, like I flipped it upside down. Like, so I wake up now at 4 a.m. in the morning, do all the creative, let's say, like, so writing thoughts down and everything. But back then it was the opposite. So even though back then it was my thing, like, to create at night, now it's becoming in the morning, which is interesting. So I would never underestimate the power of change and like moving with how you feel today.
Yeah, and adapting with different 100%. Like phases of your life, right? Like,
yeah,
it's okay. So quick recap. You get into the 3D space, you get super enthusiastic, you work together with the biggest names in the industry, you make a name for yourself, you build an agency. Out of all the projects that you have done, which one stood out for you? Is there any project that you really said like, well, there we really, really nailed it? Or
Yeah. It was one. Shoot, I should have brought the jacket. So there was one that I did like together with the fashion brand in Paris, and the exchange was not in currency; it was in actual physical things. So they made me a jacket,
nice.
Which had, I think you saw it like last time at the Media Monks, and I made them with my team. We made them like a 3D asset which they could use for this Tesla event. And it was such a wonderful like a collaboration between the three of us, like Tesla, Reeves, shout out to Reeves, and the Mountain Collective back then. So we created like this 3D animation from them, and we gave them all the 3D assets, and they gave us like physical, like, which they cost like a lot of money, but I think that's for me like super beautiful. Like, I'm going a little bit into the spiritual side, but I believe that those moments really stick up for me, man. Like, if I would do that again, I would definitely do it that way, because both we needed that, that end result. So yeah, that's my favorite project so far. You wouldn't say, huh? Like, this is a complete different thing.
Yeah, I actually expected it something else, actually. Yeah. But it's super nice. But I think makes also like total sense. I think this kind of like sometimes is like the exchange of or like this famous saying like, what would you do if money wouldn't exist and stuff like this, and goes a little bit in this direction, right? That you say like, hey, this was the one of the coolest projects that we've done, and it consisted just out of like exchanging like values, but in a different way. If we continue the journey of you pushing the all-nighters, pushing it very hard, working super hard in the creative industry, making a name for yourself, but there was also a time where you maybe pushed it a little bit too far. And yeah, in the end, you burned out in this period. I mean, you speak quite openly about it, so it's not that I catch you like cold-handed here. How was this time for you? Like, how did you realize that you've even have this feeling of burning out, or were there early signs? Can you take us a little bit along this journey?
I was, I believe I was like in my end 20s, like beginning of, like actually in 27, around that time. And it was one of the hardest times actually, like in my, like one of the most challenging times in my life. I think it was, it's just like everything at some point, you know, like you made it, you know, you are the person that you wanted to be. So what now? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, so you're making the money. You are the person that I really always wanted to be, the greatest 3D artist. And I was achieving that at the time in terms of like comparison to my environment. But then what else? Like, so the goal wasn't as big as I should have, you know, maybe projected. But on the flip side, it's obviously my responsibility. So now at the time, like, just creeped in, bro. Like, it just creeped in slowly but surely. It was just coming real. And at some point I was like, all right, so now I'm here. What am I gonna do? I took a long trip, like not a mental trip, but actually like a physical trip to the southern of Asia, and that's when I just sat down and stayed there like for a few months. And I sat down and I was like, all right, so what am I gonna do next? Because bro, like, my goal is achieved. Like, what else? It's almost like you get this like super rush, and then it's like this like double down. So now I've been there for like a few months, just enjoying the moment and trying to also to figure out like what to do. It's a big question, man. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, now that you've done what you were supposed to do, like, bro, like, it was my mission on this planet to be a 3D artist, like to actually be like an acceptable 3D artist that people say like, oh yeah, he's a 3D artist. You know, like, it's a thing, man. Like, if someone tells you that you are who you wanted to be without school, like, you teach it to yourself, like, you brought yourself to that place, it feels really good, like, to be in that space. But then once you are there, is that the place that you wanted to be? And for me, I don't think so. Like, I thought like the world has more to offer, especially when I traveled. I slowly but surely thought, like, I mean, if we are part of nature, maybe we should take care of it. It sounds, again, like very cheesy, but it really is, man. Like, it really is. So I thought, like, let me take care of myself and take care of, you know, the environment. And that's when, you know, the Mountain Collective, you know, came up.
How do you make sure like that this doesn't happen to you anymore? Like that you don't burn out and don't work yourself to the ground anymore? Because like bigger goals are maybe the wrong measurement as well, right? Because like, imagine you put yourself, I want to become bigger and better than Joe Rogan. You're probably working yourself into the ground and you will never achieve this goal. So bigger goal will not probably get you to where you like to a more healthy Mourad in the end.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's it, right? Like, it's being healthy. I think at the end of the day, your body speaks, you know, best. And at the time, like, to come back to your question of how could I maybe see it coming before I went to vacation, I think my body was loud and clear, you know. Like, at the time I was like, hey man, like, maybe we need to go on vacation, and I just did not. I think it was also like a factor of like being like in a space where I was like, oh, this is it, man. Like, I'm gonna do everything. But work-life balance have never worked for me, to be honest with you. Like, it really have never worked for me. Like, I just, if I'm passionate about something, I'm just in there. So you're right. You're completely right. It might have been also like the drive is the same as what maybe can stop you doing what you're doing. But at the same time, I think being healthy in terms of like sporting and taking care of, you know, relationships, family, those things. I have good friends around me, and they, you know, they tell me to not do certain things. So once you have those, you know, good people around you, you start to realize that, you know, oh, maybe I should stop doing that. So having an environment that helps you to grow as a person, you also bring them also the same back and help them as well to grow. So I believe, again, like having the belief system that drives you, but also having like a group of people around you that really look after you and I think lift you up. People that love you. Good to have good people around you. That's the point.
Yeah. And is there any like tip or advice or something that you can give to someone, or to like, I mean, you're doing a lot of mentoring for people, not only for 3D people, but maybe in general. Like, how do you prevent this from happening to others? Is there anything that you can share, maybe from your experience, that helped you? Except maybe the traveling, because maybe not everyone can travel to Asia and have a good life.
Yeah, definitely being healthy. That's number one for me. Like it's really number one. Number two is like having the right mindset. And number three, like practice. Like I think these 3 points it's actually written in my book as well. Like it's like health, which is also spiritual, and mindset, and then practice. Like how I believe that practice at some point becomes more related to how healthy you are. So sometimes you just want to stop, practicing something that doesn't feel, you don't feel good about it. So being healthy is actually just, it's really the most important thing.
Health, mindset, and practice. Really nice. I think that's really, really helpful for a lot of people, I think. Shifting gears a little bit and also moving towards a more happy place, because I think it's also like from the past, but I still find it always super interesting to talk about also those periods of life, because I think we also become a little bit artificial in our society. I think those topics should not be a taboo anymore. So thanks a lot for being open also about this and sharing so much. But what I find even more impressive and more beautiful is that out of this situation and this chapter of your life, actually something very nice came out of it, because you started to mentor people, and you did this or do this through the Mountain Collective podcast. So you're a fellow podcaster, so for you it's not new to sit at a microphone. You're also like very relaxed. Like what is the Mountain Collective podcast, and what do you talk about?
Mountain Collective podcast is almost like it's basically the place where it's my second nature now. It's almost like let me tell you, like the first episode, I also would love to hear your first episode, how it was, to be honest with you. But my first episode was with Jack Kohler, and he's innovation manager at a school in London, like the School of Arts in London. That was my first episode. Marcus, I can tell you, like I was nervous. And that's when you know this is your thing. It's almost like your first kiss. You're like, oh, like, can I do this? Is this legal?
Yeah.
But that I was really nervous. I even turned to my big brother. He was at home at the time. I was like, look at my hands, and I was just shaking. And I think, and now like. There are like so many, I've had so many guests that I learned so much from, and we just have a good conversation about technology, innovation, of course 3D is always there, storytelling from time to time with my friend Joshua, and future of what's happening, what's gonna happen tomorrow, maybe in few days, what's gonna happen in a few days, because we can't really predict that far. AI is a big thing today. It's really taken over a lot of spaces. It's not only like on the workspace, but also on in a general sense. Like a lot of people are gonna use AI, like even though you might not know it. So these are the topics that I'm mainly talking about. Technology, innovation, and future.
Super nice.
Yeah.
To your point, I think that's really true. Like I also see this with myself. Recently read a really cool sentence. The magic you're looking for is in the things that you're avoiding. And I think that's very true, that with a lot of those kind of like, you're super nervous for like a big speech or presentation or something like this. But then you really know, like, you care enough to be nervous. Sometimes, and I had this in jobs a lot, I didn't care anymore. I went to work. It was business as usual. We could have huge deals, like whatever, big sponsoring money, big whatever deals. Like I didn't care. Like I was never nervous to present. I was never nervous to go there. I was never nervous to present my ideas. And all of a sudden, when I now talk to clients, I get nervous. Oh, will they like my idea? Will they like the concept? Are they interested? Are they not interested? Right? And then you know that you're sitting on something that is really like also like valuable to you, I think, as well.
I think the moment that you lose that, then you want to start looking for it.
Yeah, and maybe like embracing a little bit the discomfort.
Yep.
Right. To say it is hard and it does suck, and that's just how it is. And I think sometimes I also think that helped me in the past a lot is that some things just suck. There's no way around it, but some things just need to get done. So you can do a lot, you can try to postpone it, but some things are also not enjoyable. Also when you found a business, also when you are in a job, some things just are not nice. And you just need to go through it.
Honestly, like I think if you are in a space where you are super comfortable, something is wrong. I really think so, because the opposite, it's almost like it's almost like two pictures, right? Like one picture on one hand, you see like the short-term gain, which is like pleasure, and then after that you just suffer. You know, like if you eat like 2 candies and you're like, oh, this is so nice, but then after that you just suffer like for 2-3 hours. But if you take like a 5 to 10 seconds cold shower, like really cold, at least for half an hour, you feel really good about it. So that's how nature works. Like it's a give and take. And if you take, then you have to give for a long time. But if you give, you take for a long time. So I try also like to give as much as possible. Like I just try to give as much as possible. And definitely with the podcast, man, like what you are doing with this and just giving, knowledge to other people, like this is your free, like it's your time, but you are choosing to provide and give information. So definitely good things will come. However, it just takes some time.
Exactly. Be patient.
Be patient.
Super nice. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. We got to know each other through LinkedIn basically, and from there met a couple of times, and I think had always very good chats. So I expected this to be a very good episode and really informative episode. We went through a lot through your career as a 3D artist, becoming one of the best of the game, and then just pivoting and adjusting life, traveling a lot, and now having another podcast or having your own podcast, building a super cool platform with like-minded people. And I think really respect what you do.
Thank you.
Before we leave off, I always ask the same 3 questions to every guest. The first one is, what are you not very good at right now and you want to become better at?
Ooh. I like those kind of questions.
Yeah.
Like, what am I not good at?
Yeah. And you want to become better?
In terms of like in general? Just anything.
Anything.
What am I not good at? I'm not at crying. Like, I can't cry for some reason.
Interesting.
Like, I just like cry about something. Like, I can't do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen.
No, I get it.
But I do cry when I'm super, super, super happy. So it happens when I don't want it to happen.
So you want to become better at crying or showing emotions, maybe?
Maybe like more in a positive sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What name would you give this chapter of your life?
This is the beginning, I guess. Yeah.
The beginning?
It's really the beginning. Like the one who was like pre the 3D artist was like almost like a pre-warming session. I think this is the beginning, bro. Definitely.
Okay. And the last question is, if you could send a SMS to all mobile phones in the world, what would you say?
Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself. Really nice. Beautiful words to end the podcast. Mourad, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for coming by and having this really nice chat about so much value and about so much cool things that we talked about. Thanks a lot. And follow Mourad on LinkedIn. Subscribe to his Mountain Collective podcast. And what else? I think there's not much more to shout out.
No, thank you, man. I really appreciate what you're doing. Again, this is really awesome. Providing value to more people. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, man.